So in this film, we're going to be looking at how we create text in a circle design in the likes of Photoshop. We're going to use the Academy camera icon as an excuse to actually do it. So to start with, I would recommend that you just create yourself a new document and basically make it square. Let's make this 8 inches by 8 inches and 300 resolution in case we're going to go to print. We can either have a white background, a transparent background, whatever we want. Let's keep it on white for now. We're just going to press create. Then we just need to drag in some guys. So if you've got the rulers visible, you can simply just drag a guide out. And if you've got the snap to in the view, and you come down here in the snap and the snap to, you can see it's snapped to guides and documents and so on with it. We can basically just drag it down to the middle and it will actually hold itself there. The next path, the next step I should say to actually do it, it's not actually using the likes of text straight away. We need to create the likes of an elliptical shape on the actual document itself. Let's just click into the middle and then we'll drag out. Now at this stage, unless you press the Shift and the Alt key, it's going to just be free forming. Yeah, you can kind of whatever shape it's going to be. So pressing the Shift and the Alt will then kind of control it from the middle going outwards as such. Once that's done, it takes on the color of the foreground color, but of course you can just click up into the fill if your properties box opens up and you can click onto any color that you want. It's not going to be important at this stage because we're going to switch this off eventually. Next, we are going to click on text. And at this point, when we get across towards the circle, you can see as I hover on the actual line of the ellipse, it changes to a wavy line. So at this point, if I just click, it's going to drop junk text on, lorem ipsum it's called, yeah. And all we're going to do now is basically type in the photographer. And then as long as we spelled that right, of course, it's always better for checking with Mark Cleghorn, as you will know. So at this point, it's put it on the round, the outside of the circle itself and things. Now we want to create the position. So if we now click onto the path selection tool, and as we come across, you'll see that it changes its shape, and we can move this kind of node around the document to change the positioning. Now at this stage, of course, you're going to want to choose your type, your font face, your size of your font and so on with it. So for instance, we can either do it from the properties dialog box here, yeah, or we can actually go up into the top box here and actually make the selection, depends on what you want to achieve. Right, once we've done that, we can change the font size. So as far as the text is concerned, at this point, we're just going to make it bigger. So we'll just actually use the scrubby hand tool and we'll just enlarge the actual font size so it starts to kind of wrap itself around the circle more. And if we want to space the space in between the letters, we can come back and do this later on if we want. But we can go in and basically change the actual spacing as well. Okay, so that's really down to you. If you want to reset these things, just go back to 0 and it'll kind of do that for you. Otherwise, use that scrubby once more, that little hand tool across here, and that's going to do the job. Okay, so we've done our first text. Now what we want to do is do the inner kind of text for the Academy to make it look like it's on the same circle as such. Yeah. So let's go ahead now and grab the ellipse tool again. And this time, as we drag out, remember the Shift and the Alt key when you do that. We're going to go to the outside of the font size that we just created. Now, remember it takes on the foreground color. So you can change this to whatever you want, of course. Yep. And we can't see the text below because this layer is on top. So to change it so we can see the other text, we just drag it down below the actual blue ellipse, and we can now see the orange ellipse here. Once more, exactly the same thing with this orange ellipse as our guide. In other words, the layer that we want to work on. We're just going to click onto the text tool, and as we come over once more, we can see that we've got the wavy line, and we can click on here, and once more we can just go ahead and type in what we want to. Let me just scroll out for a minute. Now, as you can see here, this text at this point is running around the outside of the document, and really what we want it to do is actually run on the inside of the circle. So once more, with the path tool, all we do now is with the node, we actually bring it inside. So I'm just literally dragging it in and out, and in that same node to move it around. We can see how that kind of really begins to do the job and things. So that's how we put the basic text onto the circle. Remember at this point, if we want to space out the letters again more, we can basically just push them away from each other. If we want to reset, we put into the zero mode, using that scrubby to begin with, kind of to work with by eye. And then you've pretty much got your kind of balance. If we look on the text though, the spacing here is 720. So if we kind of go on to here now, you can see though, if we did the spacing of 720 above, it would overlap on the other. So what I'm going to do is just space out the Photographer Academy a little bit, sorry, the photographer part a little bit more. So around about 220 there. Click onto the other text, change that into 220 as well. Whoops, wrong button. And of course we want to make sure the opacity is at 100% there. So you can see what we're doing is spreading the text around or making it bigger. That's your choice. Once that's done, of course, we really don't need the outer edges at all then. Let's just change some color. So I'm just going to double click onto the font on the top first. And I'm just going to click onto the color of the font. And in this case, I want to kind of go and choose the orange, which is the Photographer Academy orange. And the same way, I'm going to double click onto here, clicking onto the color, choose the background color font again. If you want to know what your specific colors are and you want to make a note of them, if you just copy the actual hashtag number here, you press Control C, copy at that point. Then on the bottom ellipse, on the orange one, I can actually paste in the color that it is. So if you're using colors and you want to actually remember what they are, just basically kind of make a note of them, stick them on the side of your monitor, whatever it is. But if you're using them a lot, then it's basically done. So from here now, we've got ourselves a bit of a floating kind of font. And if I want to add, say, another logo into the middle here of the camera, then I can basically add that in and things really. So if I just go and find my camera icon big for a minute, and I drag that on into the middle. So I'm just dragging it from a folder into the middle of the document a minute. And you can see it's way bigger than I need. It automatically, because I dragged it on, is giving me the bounding boxes to kind of control the size. So let me just kind of bring it into the middle. Decide on the size that we want, that's okay. And if you look onto the layers palette here, you'll also see that it's automatically become a smart object, which means behind here, if I double click into the icon, because this was a PSD that I kind of dragged on anyway, it's got options for me. So if I want to say, well, I want the camera clear center, so it's invisible through, so it'll take on any of the actual text or color or picture that is going to be behind. And I just press Control S now to save that. That will update the logo that we have here already. Okay, so at this point we've got our text, we've got our logo that we've already kind of pre-designed in the middle. Let's say we want to add a stroke around the text. Let's go to the photographer first, and we just come down onto the FX and we go to stroke. At this point we can decide on how big it is. This is set as 5 pixels, and it's set to be outside of the actual text. Going to press OK to that, and of course it's just on black. Pressing OK. And then I also want to do a drop shadow. So let's click on the drop shadow on the adjustment layer. Let's just drag it out, pressing OK. And if I want that same kind of stroke and drop shadow on the other text layer, which I obviously do, all I've got to do is click and press the Alt key and then drag these down onto the other text layer, and then it takes on the actual characteristics. Or we could just click in and add the adjustment layers again. So what we just created there was font all based on a circle. Initially we created the photographer font, text on the path, yes, and then we created a secondary ellipse, and we basically made that ellipse bigger than the outside of the text. Once we'd done that, of course, we used the path selection tool, and then we decided where that was going to be. So in other words, if I just come down onto this again and we just grab into the path selection tool once more, you can see the little icons come up there, and at this stage I can move the Academy around in its shape, and I can also put it either outside or inside of the actual path that we created. And that's how we create text on a path in Photoshop, which is ideal for logo design or kind of even text and font play. I would usually at this stage now to create a logo based on this. Let me just switch off those ellipse colors to begin with. That shows my font again. I would basically group these together. So remember, select Shift, so Shift and select those layers, Control G to basically make a group out of them. And at this stage, I would go in and make a new layer based on what's visible. So Shift, Control, Alt, E. I've got a one layer now with everything on. And if I want to switch the white on as well, and I do the same thing, Shift, Control, Alt, E, I've basically got a logo on white, a logo that is clear, and of course I've still got all the actual information here for me to go and adjust it.